Hey everybody, welcome to our AEW Post Game live show. We're going to be talking about AEW All Out, which was Saturday afternoon. Where do you stand, Jimmy? Are you into these Saturday afternoon pay-per-views? Would you rather them be back on Saturday night? What was your take from today's
I
show?
like Saturday afternoon because it worked personally better with my schedule, but it's not for everybody. And it was a really nice day today. And I was sitting on the couch, I was watching this, and I was just looking outside. I'm like, dang, it's a beautiful day outside, and I'm watching wrestling for 5 hours in the middle of it. So yeah, it's great to have your evening free, but it's also like it's fun to watch wrestling when it's raining and it's like dreary outside, but it's super nice. It there's an easy pull.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think this is just sort of me being accustomed to traditional pay-per-view wrestling. Now, of course, I'd rather it be on Sunday because it kind of signals like the end of this weekend and you get to watch a good wrestling show. But the thing about the day is, if you are in this kind of obviously with as much wrestling as we watch, I'm not speaking necessarily to everyone here because not everyone watches as much stuff as we do. Saturday's kind of like the one day where you get to take a rest, unless you're just a diehard Collision watcher. But again, Collision's in the evening. I kind of like the idea of having a Saturday day open so we can do stuff with our families and our significant others and our friends. Having wrestling right smack dab in the middle of that, to me, is almost like the wrestling companies not respecting, their fans in a way. Though I know Tony Khan, if it was up to him, he would do it normally in the normal evening time, but he got pushed for WWE. So it's not his fault necessarily, but the All-In show, you're sitting on your ass for 6 hours and you're like, "Oh, where did my Saturday go?" Like that's kind of the thing.
Like I
But
have to get up in the middle of the show and go for a walk for a second. It's like, man, I have 3 hours on this couch, man. Come on.
yeah, that's just the way that things are right now. The ecosystem of pro wrestling, I guess that you could fault the competitive aspect of WWE, though. Tony could just decide not to push his shows anymore either and just say, hey, if you want to go head to head, so be it. But yeah, that's my feeling right now is like, if you want your fans to actually have lives, I would suggest not running Saturday pay-per-views during the day.
I mean, if you're not a football fan, you have your entire Sunday free now. Like there's
Yes.
nothing going on, but the intersection of football and pro wrestling is actually pretty large. So I imagine that doesn't apply to everybody. But yeah, man, like I was talking about this on another show that I do, but when we were kids, the idea that you would have all day of wrestling sounded like a dream come true. Like man, if I could just watch this all the time, it would be amazing. My God, we're in that world now, and it's overwhelming, and it's just like you cannot close the door. Like you just have to be okay with not watching something and moving on, rather than making sure that you're watching everything and cataloging it. God bless Paul Fontaine. I could never like archive every match that I watch, score it, and make sure that I'm catching everything just in case I miss something. God bless.
Yeah, totally. So as most people probably realize, WWE is running their WrestlePalooza show as we speak. It is a couple of hours in. I think the CM Punk match, AJ Lee match is on. But
I keep getting updates on my computer of what happened on the last match. I'm like, that's actually helpful. Now I don't have to watch it.
I watched the opening match of the WWE show, but I kind of watched it, on a small screen, half paying attention because AEW's main event was going on too. I didn't like it from what I saw, but I'm going to go back and rewatch it because some of it was probably me not focusing 100%. There's also a little bit of like this match feels like 2014 or 2015, so that was kind of the theme of both shows, by the way. There's a lot of throwback stuff on the AEW show that we'll talk about.
So better days in the past kind of mentality.
Trying to create moments, I guess. Both shows creating moments. So the AEW show, we'll talk about kind of the big moments and the big news coming out. By the way, Keila Cash and Paul Fontaine will be up after the WWE show is done on this channel. If you're listening on the network, that should be uploaded by the time you hear this as well. But so we'll have a couple of different shows in the feed. We had the Power Bombshells early this morning with the pre show. So lots of content here. I don't want to keep everyone, wait, I don't want to do an hour and a half show after people just watch so much wrestling today. So we'll kind of try and keep it briefer than normal. So let's hit the main news coming out of this show, and then we'll kind of work backwards and talk about some of the matches as well. Hangman Page retains his world title with an almost 40-minute match against Kyle Fletcher. I don't think anybody would be surprised by this result. In fact, I'm going to guess only the biggest Kyle Fletcher fans in the world maybe thought that there was going to be a title change here.
Mm-hmm.
So they went for the classic world title match, long match. I know there's a lot of people who'd love this match, by the way. I thought it was really good. My issue was, as I'm watching it, you are very aware and coherent that they're going long, almost for the sake of going long, like not because this match needed it, not because the story needed it, but because they kind of wanted it to for the competition's sake. They almost went all the way to 5 hours. It was like 4 hours and 55 minutes or something. 58 minutes. So if I look at it through that lens, I thought the match was too long. But if you look at it through the lens of like not caring about any of those things, they were able to do a 38-minute match and do it very, very well. You don't really see that many 38-minute matches. Like, think of the 1 hour matches that you've seen in your life. Most of them, there's like these spots of, historically. But then there are also ones like I can remember the MJF and Will Ospreay one where, I mean, I imagine those guys were so tired because they worked so hard to give you action throughout that whole match. This was very similar to that, but it was in the ring. They didn't use the outside stuff where MJF and Ospreay kind of got a little bit of a cheat code for theirs. So, and 40 minutes is not 60 minutes, but that was kind of what I thought was they are working at a high pace athletically, but the match itself was a little bit slower paced. It was kind of like a really traditional babyface heel match. Lots of heat early with Kyle Fletcher taking, I don't know if you were to put a clock on it, probably 60% of the match, maybe even more than that.
Mm-hmm.
And then Hangman coming back, for that last 5 to 10 minute sprint to the finish. So in that aspect, I thought the match was really good. But did it need to be 38 minutes? Did it need to be 40 minutes? Probably not. And maybe it affected, maybe it wouldn't have affected me as much as if this was a 3-hour pay-per-view rather than a 5-hour pay-per-view. But what were your thoughts about the length of this thing?
When we watched the show together, and somebody mentioned that it reminded them of a really classic New Japan match from maybe like 8 or 9 years ago, like that 2016 to 2018 era. And I think it hit for me that way because of the lack of interference from the outside. This was a very true one-on-one match, no interference, classic babyface versus heel match, even though the dynamics were the young upstart heel and the veteran babyface. I really liked the match, but when I was thinking about it afterwards, the thing that I was taking away from it is this probably isn't the last time that these two are going to wrestle each other, and they're both going to be better at this when they meet up the next time. And this was a very excellent match for, the combined experience of the two. And it's just the potential of them meeting again is pretty fantastic. They laid a lot of groundwork for the future with this.
I do wonder if this is going to be a feud more than just the contender of the week or the contender of the month. Because that's what we kind of thought when they put this match together. It was like, oh, they need a world title match for this pay-per-view, and they don't really have one.
Mm.
And, you know, Tony Khan has had his commentary. I guess he got really mad that the report about Wardlow possibly being in this match was out. He got really mad at that. And I mean, if that he should, if that was bad information, but
I mean, the idea that Wardlow was in the conversation to be against Hangman at some point, getting conflated into gossip into being a world title contender, is a classic game of telephone.
Yes. But just the idea, like, I guess if you bring back Wardlow, you want to bring him back in a big spot.
Mm-hmm.
If he was even sniffing like the top of this card, the way that they brought him back, I might have a little bit of like side eye around that. So I don't know. Just the idea that he was kind of close to this thing is interesting. But
yeah, if they had to make a choice between Kyle Fletcher and Wardlow as the person to face Hangman in this scenario, I think they made the right decision.
Yeah, I think so too. You give this guy a shot. Now, Dave and I and Dave and Brian have been talking about this all along, which is as a money match, as a match for business, this is not the match that you would necessarily go to, especially on this weekend.
Right.
As a building block to the future of your company, this was a fantastic match so that you could elevate Kyle Fletcher into the main event scene. I didn't really like the storyline going in, and I've been very vocal about that. Like, I thought the storyline should have been really about getting revenge for Kenny Omega instead of this, like, oh, I want to see you without your crew, and let's really see what kind of man you are. So that didn't really resonate with me, but I knew the match was going to be really good. But again, if this show was 3 hours or 3.5 hours and we got that same world title match, I think I would have been way into it because I hit a wall. We all might have hit a wall during that tag team ladder match where I was just kind of adjusting my seat.
I hit a wall at the women's 4-way at the beginning, and I had to kind of regroup. And then I understood why everyone was feeling that way during the tag match.
Yeah. Okay, so another big piece of news. Or a big result. Mark Briscoe finally got his win against MJF.
And they thought it couldn't happen. I thought it was never going to happen.
I love this match, by the way. And I know that from a qualitative standpoint, more people are going to think that both the triple threat and the main event are better matches than this. This one was my favorite of the night. The story, Mark Briscoe, MJF as the heel, those parts were played to perfection.
Yes.
Now, I've also been very vocal about the fact that the tables and tacks stipulation ruined my excitement a little bit before on paper, before the show. I still didn't love a lot of it, but what the thumbtacks did, I think it did two things. The tables and tacks thing, I think it did two things. One, it just made Mark Briscoe even more compelling than he is. You saw him take all of those moves on the tacks. You saw him bleeding. There was one moment where he's just bleeding like crazy, and he kind of just smiles right into the camera, like a Mick Foley kind of thing that Mick would do. And I'm like, damn, this guy's such a great baby face. But the second thing, and I think this is pretty strategic, is he called his shot and he won. It gives MJF a little bit of an out, and maybe they have another match at some point down the line and MJF calls his shot for his match. So I like that style of booking, and I commend Toni and MJF and all the folks involved as far as setting that story. And then the final spot of the match is he hits the J Driller, and it was the J Driller, right?
Yeah.
And then
he called for the J Driller, and then he hit it, and everyone was just like, "Oh my god, he's gonna win!"
And then MJF, being the the devil himself that he is, he sneaks over closer to the bottom rope, and I immediately thought, oh man, they're gonna break our hearts again. MJF's gonna grab that bottom rope, and then he's gonna win the match. Nope, it was just a tease. Mark Briscoe wins that match. So I thought that whole thing was brilliant. Again, could they have done the same thing in a normal match? Probably yes. But the gimmick didn't hurt it as much as I thought it was going to hurt it, in my opinion. Now, this is just my opinion and sort of what I like about wrestling. But man, Mark Briscoe is the kind of wrestling character that still works with me in my, my wrestling fandom of today. So I just thought that was great stuff.
Yeah, I'm with you on all of that, and I'm gonna talk about three quick things that my takeaways on this match that I really really liked. One, the tables and thumbtacks gimmick ensured that, metaphorically speaking and literally, you saw that Briscoe was willing to walk through hell for his brother still. Literally, just was absolutely ready to do that. That's a good, or the best distillation of what his character is what he's willing to do and the length that he'll go in the ring is just far greater than everybody else. Number two, I don't know the next time we're going to be in a situation where MJF loses two high-profile matches like this back-to-back in a row in his career, because he lost the match in Arena Mexico against Mystico the night before, and he loses this. And a lot of the conversation was, you just don't see MJF losing both of these matches, and he's probably going to lose against Mystico. Ergo, people are drawing this conclusion against Briscoe. So this was the perfect night to do it, because number one, he has the out of, going through that match and then flying to Toronto and doing all these things. And, he can do the heel excuses, but it doesn't take away that Briscoe won that match clean. The last thing that I want to compliment is the match was very simple, in which MJF was doing the beatdown for like the first 5 to 6 minutes. But that first flat back bump that he took after dishing out all the pain ignited that crowd, and they never lost it for the time after that.
So you saw the Mystico and MJF match. In fact, you just saw it minutes ago. What would you think about it?
It was as good as advertised. It was 18 minutes in which Mystico was bloodied within the first few minutes, and then the pace of it was basically Mystico overcoming all of the odds over and over and over again. And that crowd, Arena Mexico, it absolutely made the match. John Cruz was on the side of MJF, and Templario was the second to Mystico. And guys, everything that you heard about that match is true. If people want to say that Mystico is their wrestler of the year based off this match, I'm not going to argue it. It was as good as advertised.
Okay, so let's move on. Let's talk about some of the other stuff coming out of this show. So, Pac is back. Pac has been AWOL from AEW television for quite a long time. And there was a tease by Excalibur, who was talking about the Death Riders, and Claudio, Wheeler, and Marina were out. And he said, oh, something about all the Death Riders are there. And a lot of people were like, well, where's Pac? Like, he's one of them and he's not there. Does that mean he's gone? What's going on? And it was literally just a tease, because Pac shows up at the end of this match as we think Darby is about to win. And he throws Darby in the body bag, and the John Moxley wins the match. So you had the return, and we'll talk about the other return in a second, but you had the return of Pac, which is a moment, and this is something that AEW historically has been really good at, creating interest in their television shows and in their product by returning people at the pitch perfect right time. That was good for this. That was a positive for this. We'll talk a little bit about the match itself, but Pac returning, what did you think about the way that they did it, and also how they kind of tried to get us to pay attention to the idea that, oh yeah, Pac is not there during the commentary?
When I saw Pac, the first thing was I felt like he had lost something. Like whether it was the haircut or the outfit that he was wearing, like he was still Pac, but it didn't quite hit right. And I didn't understand why that was. I wasn't particularly upset that Darby was inevitably going to lose the match because as I was thinking about it, like Kingston came back and won, Briscoe won his match. At some point, one of these plucky baby faces from the upper mid card, it wasn't going to be their number tonight. And so I'm like, oh, okay, well that makes sense. We can mind that a little bit more. I want to see where they go with it because now that you have Daniel Garcia in there, now that, who knows what's happening with Kris Statlander and with Pac back, that stable's getting kind of big. And the Gonzales family seems to be operating pretty well with a large stable, but that doesn't feel like quite the right vibe for the Death Riders.
Yeah. Well, I have my own thoughts and stuff about that. We'll talk about that when we get to the match, but so another piece of information, you mentioned it, Kris Statlander wins the 4-way to win the women's world title by pinning Toni Storm using Wheeler Yuta's finisher or his cradle. And I thought it was flat. It was one of those unexpected, out of nowhere moments that I don't think hit with this live crowd. And it didn't hit at home either. That was kind of the prevailing thought in our Discord. However, you didn't hate it.
No.
I think you're kind of looking forward at the possible story. But to me, Toni Storm is your biggest star, maybe in the company, but at least on the women's side. And when she loses that title, it should really mean something. And this is not really anything against Kris Statlander other than maybe her creative has been so up and down in her AEW history. It did not feel like it was the right time for that to happen. And they could have built towards it in a different way, and I may have a different feeling about that. But in a rando 4-way where Toni Storm, the babyface, calls for the match, so now she looks like an idiot, and she loses to probably, if not the least over character right now, at least the second from the bottom, depending on what you think of Hayter. I know she's got this ongoing story with the Death Riders that seems just to be going on forever and ever and ever. So maybe this is finally a sign that we're going to actually get some movement on that storyline. She's got this thing with Willow that, again, seems to be going on forever and ever and ever and ever. So maybe we get a little bit of an update on that as well. And if so, fine. But I think they should have done those things beforehand to make her character hotter, so it didn't feel like such a flat finish when you beat the biggest star in that division.
Yeah, I validate all of that. Like there was a little bit of like, this came out of nowhere. They were discussing all these things, like keeping the Death Rider subplot alive with Kris Statlander and the Jamie Hayter Thekla stuff. Like they had all these little threads, but the finish came out of completely left field. Like nobody was really expecting that. And that's good and that's bad because we got a flat finish that no one was expecting, and we got a lot of confusion. And I do remember when Kris Statlander came back from injury and immediately pinned Jade Cargill and won that TBS title, and it was a huge babyface victory. And there could have been real shades of that if they decided to do that, and it felt like maybe that wasn't the right play. Like having her win the title with the help of the Death Riders this pay-per-view, next pay-per-view being Toni Storm versus Kris Statlander, and her joining the Death Riders cements it. That brings more women up to the level of Toni Storm if the match is good. And we've been talking about how can we get more women at a higher level so that it's not just Toni Storm and Mercedes Moné having these semi-main, potentially main, talking about them main eventing these shows. Kris Statlander and Willow Nightingale, to me, are the next ones on that tier. And this, to me, looks like the vehicle to get them to have their big main event world title match in which they finally arrive. You know, the thing that they've been dancing around for the last 2 or 3 years between their feuding, their frenemies, the Stokely time, you know, the Harley time. This starts putting in that direction. And we hopefully will have, you know, a women's Continental Classic in the future. And if you have Toni Storm chasing the title rather than having the title, that introduces way more interesting elements in which Toni can be drivers of a story that we don't normally have. And the only other thing that I have to add would be, it was a rando 4-way, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now that we've done a title change in a rando 4-way on a pay-per-view, you've kind of set the precedent where you can't immediately rule out that a champion is just going to retain in a 4-way. And for that, I kind of like that they did it like that, because there's a lot of times where you're just like, oh, well, it's not a big deal. It's a 4-way. The champ is going to retain, and you cannot think about this match. Now you kind of have to, you know, introduce the possibility of like, oh, well, they're open to making a random decision like this, whether it's good or bad.
Okay, so then other couple of pieces of news, and then we'll go through the matches. So Beth Phoenix made her AEW debut as Beth Copeland. She helped get rid of Stokely in the opener. Stokely pulled the referee out in the spot in that I hate the most in wrestling matches. Obviously, was not a DQ. Pulled the referee out when he was making a count. Both companies do this. I hate it every single time.
It's the worst.
Beth comes out to grab Stokely, gives him a spear, puts him on her shoulders, and carries him out of the ring. And then after the match, as the baby faces are getting beat up here, she comes back, and there's this moment where Beth is all by herself because Copeland and Cage are handcuffed to the ropes, and she looks, and it's like, oh man. And she kisses Adam as if to say, I love you, and I may not get out of this thing alive. And she starts throwing blows with these dudes. That part was great. The arguable part, and I'm sure this will be very polarizing, is they then give her a spike pile driver. Actually, that's how they got Christian out of it. Christian was not handcuffed. They also had given Christian a spike pile driver, so he was out of it. She then also got a spike pile driver. So this was the kickoff match to this show, by the way. And you already had the woman going out on the stretcher gimmick. So that was, I saw a lot of people didn't like that. I understood it. I didn't think it was great or necessary, but what it did was it set up the next match for them to do. And it's not like, unless they try and add Stokely to the match and then Beth to the match as well, I don't know if I want to see that necessarily, but this feud must continue based off of this angle. So Beth Copeland is in. I haven't seen the graphic yet, if she's going to get the All Elite graphic.
It was great when she came out. I personally had 0 issues with her taking the spike pile driver, because the way that she was portrayed, the way that she carried herself, and the way that the other wrestlers responded to her made her feel like a dominant physical force rather than like the damsel in distress. You know, like this wasn't someone coming after her and like trying to chase her down and hurt her. She was like, no, I'm going to fight these mothers, and I may go down, but no one's going to stop. No, you know what I mean? Like, this was all her on her own agency. And when it's their own agency, I'm willing to look at it and think like, no, I don't need to white knight that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you. Like I said, it's going to be polarizing. I've seen lots of people who didn't like it, and some people who thought
I
it
get
was
it.
good storytelling. Okay. The last thing that we'll add, and then we'll go through the matches, is Jack Perry is back, and they really went back in time with this one.
Oh, did they?
So at the end of the ladder match, the Bucks were in the ring. Jack Perry showed up. He started fighting them, and then he takes a double super kick, and he's knocked out. They're about to give him the what was it? The former VIP trigger. EVP trigger, which is now, I guess, being the elite trigger. What is it? What do they call
trigger,
it? BTE trigger. Yeah. And so they're about to do it, and then a video plays. So I guess the video stopped them from moving. Like maybe it was like freeze tag. Like once the video started, they had to freeze. And it was a video of Jack Perry with his Frankenstein's monster of Luchasaurus, who dropped the kill switch belt and is back to being Luchasaurus, and he came in for the save. So I'm assuming that's the direction that they're moving for the near future, which is Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus. Now, I like Jungle Boy, Jack Perry. I like Jack Perry being back. I thought he got railroaded unnecessarily. I didn't want them to turn back the clock on this one because it almost feels like all of the stuff that he did to try and build himself up to be a solo star, which you can admit that it didn't work. I'm totally fine with that. But you can also try to rev on it. You can try to do some things. They went back to the cheat code of let's do something that the fans actually liked, even if it's a step back for him. But we'll see. Maybe a feud with the Bucks is all that he needs to kind of get back on his feet. The babyface thing is probably going to be better for him too. I just didn't like seeing them go back to something that previously worked because he was trying to do something else, and it's kind of like an admission of failure.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, what did you think about Jack Perry's return?
I thought that they laid the groundwork pretty cleverly because do you remember the video package they did when Kill Switch came back last month where he was being revived? And
kind of.
It was the same footage that they used in this one. It was just extended. It was the same arm in like activating and doing the shot and doing all that. And I remember looking at the jacket and being like, that's Jack Perry's jacket. You know, it was like he's the one that brought him back. So they're doing this whole thing. And to me, I think that they're going to go a little bit back on Jungle Boy, but I don't think they're going to do the Jungle Boy part. I think there might be a bit of honoring JR and just calling him Jungle Jack Perry and kind of doing more of a Monster Hunter gimmick. Because he was on Instagram this past week, you know, forging knives and like doing the whole thing. And when you saw on his side, he had the knife pouch, like the knife holster on his side. So if he's Jungle Jack Perry, you can more or less portray him as like a hunter type, which it's better than being like young Tarzan of the jungle. You know what I mean? It's like you take whatever House of Tortureness that he has, you know, like that kind of scalp hunting mentality that they try to employ there. Yeah. And you give him a little bit of an edge. And I think you can go forward with this, even though you're going backwards a lot.
By the way, shout out to Fernando, who's always hanging out with us on these recap shows. Shout out to Fernando. All right, so that was what I would consider the major news coming out of this show. So we'll give some quick thoughts on some of these matches. Edge and Christian against FTR opened the show. Now, I was kind of perturbed by how they started this pay-per-view with Comedy Hour with ENC. Like, I'm like, what the hell is this? They were walking in the locker room or in the back, and you know, they saw an old school hockey player who they loved, who I'm guessing 1% of the viewing audience maybe would have known who that hockey player was. Like, I know the name. I'm not a big hockey fan. I know the name, but because I'm a sports fan. But that was interesting. And then who was the dude that was in the back that you knew?
The bottle cap glasses from Trailer Park Boys. I don't remember exactly what his name is.
Trailer Park Boys.
Yeah.
So another really super niche kind
Canadian
of pop culture
comedy,
reference, Canadian. And so my thought was like, you want to show that to the live crowd, they will absolutely eat that up. You show that on our pay-per-view. This is not regional territorial wrestling, right? This is a national product.
Bubbles from Trailer Park Boys.
And if you're going to bring in pop culture folks, you should bring in pop culture folks that the majority of your audience is going to understand. Instead, it felt like goofy Edge and Christian stuff from back in the day. And I didn't like that at all. So I was like, oh gosh, they're already doing this dumb stuff, because this match and the promo that Adam Copeland cut on Dynamite to tell us about the importance of this match and why it's a, you know, an opportunity for FTR to show if they really truly are the best. It's like, yeah, how about we take this match serious instead of doing comedy before the match starts? Anyways, I thought the match was a lot of fun. It was an old school style tag team match. Thankfully, because we had a lot of stuff that was new school and multi-person and gimmicks and everything else. So this was a throwback, which I enjoyed. I liked the style. I liked that style match. The finish came off a little flat. It was just Edge with a spear. And Christian holding one of the I forget which person got speared and which person Christian held back to not be able to interfere. But good kickoff. It wasn't the best match between these teams. I'm sure when they have another match, it'll be even more serious. It'll be even better. There will be more stakes. This was kind of the intro to that, so I was totally fine with that. Good kickoff to the pay-per-view. The hometown heroes, got the W, and then we got to see the return of Beth Phoenix as Beth Copeland. So all of that stuff was good. I thought it was a very solid way to debut or to kick off this new AEW pay-per-view on Max. What were your thoughts on the opener?
I was definitely thrown off by Bubbles from the Trailer Park Boys and the Green Bastard, because I'm like, why is this happening here? And by the time the match was over, I completely forgot about it. And you mentioned that the finish was really flat, but the fact that they decided they were going to, in fact, run this back a couple more times at least, it makes a lot more sense. You can't really have that conclusive finish. As for the match itself, I've said this a couple of times when it comes to Edge and Christian, or Adam Copeland and Christian. And whenever they do some of these matches, it feels like they've been dreaming of these matches their entire lives. And they're finally getting to get it out of their system. Like, they're indulgent in a way that's almost charming, because you've been on this journey with them for so long that it feels like it's part of your journey too. But you run a risk of people doing this that don't have the kind of affinity and reverence that these two have. So it can be tricky if you kind of go down that a bit too much. But FTR and Copeland and Christian are some of the best tag teams in the world.
Yeah.
And this was just a really great opener that almost took the WWE style from them for the beginning of the match.
Okay, here's a not serious question, but
Sure.
I'm interested in what you think. Adam Copeland's go-to line right now is, "He's an asshole, but he's my asshole."
Mm-hmm.
Is that working? Is it cute?
I think it is.
Okay.
When the entire arena yelled, "He's our asshole," about Christian, and the dude could not hide the smile on his face. It was just one of those, these guys are workshopping all of these ideas, and they're just loving that the audience is just playing along with it. It's not going to change the company. It's not going to change the business. But it is allowing the fans to just have a really good time with an act that they know isn't going to be around forever.
Yeah. At some point, do you think Christian completely turns babyface?
Yes. I mean, you've got to do the hug. Where every match that they win, Christian's a little more okay with the hug. And there's going to come a point probably after the FTR thing is over and the Kip, the Nick Wayne stuff is over and all that stuff. And they, maybe go for that one big run for the titles. I hope that's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm there for that. You know what I mean? Like that just sounds like the Butch and Sundance one last ride. Like I'm okay with that. I'm more okay with those two doing it than really the Hardys and the Dudleys and a lot of these other like tag teams that are hanging on for a while.
They can clearly move better than those other teams.
Yeah, I'm just watching them and I'm like, no, I'm here for this. This feels right. This feels fun.
I agree.
And it just feels a little more authentic.
Do you think WWE has copyright or trademark on the 5-second pose, or could they do that on a show?
I think if they called it something different and just like a 5-second countdown, instead of a 5-second pose, they can.
But could they do the flash photography thing, even though nobody actually has flash cameras?
I think that you can, because you have to exercise like using these things. Like you can't just let it sit dormant forever. You know what I mean? Like you have to show clear intent to like keep this in perpetuity. And I haven't seen them like exert any control over like the 5-second pose, or even like show an example of it being in use in the last 20 years.
Yeah. I'm just very interested to see how much they redo of their original shtick.
I mean,
what they should do? You know what they should do? Because I don't know if is Kurt Angle on a Legends deal?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, so you can't bring him in, but that's what I was gonna say. They should just bring in Kurt and do the whole thing with the homies again.
Yeah, I would love a little kazoo action, but I don't know if they're ever going to be able to pull that one
off. All right, so the second match, and I think we all kind of thought that this was maybe the weakest match on the entire show, was Big Bill, and out came Brian Keith with Big Bill against Eddie Kingston. It was, I think I'm very comfortable in my original thought, and I'm not saying, oh, this was the wrong thing to do or whatever, and I'm right. But my original thought was you can use Eddie Kingston in a much better way. It maybe in one of the ways that they used Jack Perry or they used Beth Phoenix in like that surprise way. You could have used Eddie maybe in that John Moxley match. But I guess you had Pac, so maybe you don't want to do both. But I was like, Eddie should be a bigger deal than just being in a randomly announced match on the second show. Like his return, he's been gone for so long, and the match wasn't great. Tony Schiavone absolutely miscalled the finish. Eddie Kingston whiffed on a spinning back fist, and Tony Schiavone said that he actually missed it, and then he pinned him. So Schiavone, I like to get on Schiavone's case because I don't think he's very good. I'm not going to fully be too upset with him for that because he did miss. Like he did not connect with that thing. I just don't think Tony thought that would lead to the finish. I thought he probably thought that if it was going to be the finish,
the match, no one was thinking that this was going to be the end of the match.
And he probably thought that in this day and age with pro wrestling, the wrestlers themselves know that it didn't hit, and so they could have audibled to stand up one more time and do it, but they didn't, so he kind of looked foolish there. But that was really what the match was, just Eddie doing a bunch of spinning back fists and Big Bill doing like athletic Kevin Nash stuff, and that was the match. And it just sort of existed, and it left you going like, is that all this was for? Like we could have done this in a different way, but hey, you're not going to hit on everything.
Do you think it would have been better if Big Bill had done an open challenge at 2300, the 2300 arena, and talking down his opponent, and Eddie Kingston comes out as a complete surprise? You do the same match, but the shock and the realization of Eddie Kingston being there is like, has forgiven everything, and this match is received better. Because the anticipation of Eddie showing up and then the match not being up to like what people were hoping, I think had a cross effect.
I think the way that it's okay. So if we think about where they got, so we didn't even talk about this part, but Hook comes out to save Eddie from the 2-on-1.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was on Wednesday or the previous Wednesday. Hook did his promo saying like, okay, now I understand the Samoa Joe thing. I get it, why they replaced me. And maybe it's time to go on my own, or maybe it's not, ... And so this is his not going on his own. So we know that the tease was for Hook to have Eddie as his second. I wonder maybe if it would have been better for it to have been Big Bill against Hook. And then you when you get
right,
and let's say Big Bill even wins, and then he's getting double teamed, and then you bring Eddie in to save Hook. I think that would have been way better than what we got. But then you would have had to see Hook wrestle, and I don't know who wants to see Hook wrestle on a pay-per-view at this point, because he's a bit, I would say, I don't know, cold. I guess cold is the right word. His music sucks,
tepid.
by the way.
His presentation is tepid.
Yeah. So, but they're doing something with him, and that something is Eddie Kingston. You know what's interesting about this is usually the old guy. When you pair up the old guy with the young guy, some of it is to freshen up the old guy. But in this case, the pairing is really to freshen up Hook by using the old guy, which is kind of an interesting thing. But I think Fernando in the chat, and shout out to Maria Graciela who's in the chat as well. They do have a lot of tag teams right now.
Yes, they do.
Like if you think of who they brought back, and you can put Hook and Eddie Kingston. And so we haven't talked about this yet, but Tony Khan is going to have a Wednesday announcement. If I can I find this?
Tony Khan has a major announcement.
Today's been one of the greatest days in the history of AEW.
I hope he says that to start his announcement.
Maybe we're getting a new men's belt of some kind.
Okay, so we were talking about what it could be. Another belt. We thought maybe it could be a women's tag team division or tag team title. That could be something. He's been asked about the Women's Continental Classic. We've heard his answer on that.
Qualifiers for the C2?
We asked Dave about that. Dave thought it was a little early for that. What if we brought, and I've jokingly made this comment on different podcasts, because we have all of these tag teams, how about we create the 2025 version of the Crockett Cup, the Sean Cup, and you bring in some teams from New Japan, you bring in some teams from CMLL, you have this stacked tag team division, and you have your unified championship for that style of tournament. You could also do something with tag teams, and you can have a cup in this sense where the winners get their cup, and then the next year they give the cup back, just like a hockey tournament, the Stanley Cup, and then you do the tournament that way. That's something that I would love, but at the same time, I always thought the Crockett Cup was really cool and a cool idea, and
yeah.
But they only did it for a few years. So
let me ask you this: if they were to do this, would you rather that the final match be something that has already been like teased and built up, like say like it's an intersection for FTR and Copeland and Christian to meet like for all the marbles in the end? Or would you do something where this is how you get like the Young Bucks versus Copeland and Christian in the end? It was like two tag teams that you've always wanted to see with each other, and this is how they get to it. You know what I mean? Like, what would you rather do?
I would set the brackets up so that whatever money matches you think you have in the tournament, that you would get them no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the time you got to the final one, maybe if you tell the stories very well in a tournament like that, then you're creating matches that people are like, oh my gosh, I never thought that I'd really want to see that. And you can kind of build that. And then maybe you get like a fresh match, because there is a variable in tournaments, right? Like sometimes you can create a tournament and you're like, yep, that's what I thought was going to happen. And other times you're like, oh my gosh, that there's an upset here. NCAA tournament. Tony's a sports fan. He knows. So yeah, I think there's just so many. Now the detriment to this is people will say, oh my God, another tournament. We just have tournament after tournament. But at least, much like the C2, and I guess to an extent the Owen, though sometimes I feel like the Owen brackets are kind of lame. But at least you would get you would have to make it like every possible tag team, and it would have to dominate your TV. It doesn't mean that we have to do it now, by the way, because we do have the Continental Classic coming. But I would love to see him think out of the box in that way, because one of the things that we've always talked about with the creation of AEW now 6 years ago is that can a tag team match be the main event of your show? And with the Young Bucks and with FTR and with Kenny Omega and Hangman Page, I can't remember if there's actually been a tag team match main eventing the Lucha Bros. Like, just the idea of like, let's focus on this men's tag team division. And then you can let, in the women's side, you can just make more singles programs for the women. I just think there's a uniqueness that they could do that WWE would not dare, right? If we're trying to be different, like WWE just would not dare putting together something like the C2. They would not dare putting something together like a Crockett Cup style tournament, because they wouldn't take it seriously and they wouldn't want to beat anybody and they wouldn't know how to get out of certain things. So that is just something that was on my mind. I don't think it's that. It could be, re-signing somebody like maybe Chris Jericho. We talked about that today at Dave's house about whether or not Jericho would have been a great surprise at the end. So there's a bunch of things that they can do, but I am interested. One of the other things someone said, or I think it's actually Dave that mentioned it, is it announcing that you're running head to head against WrestleMania 2 years out? I don't think it would be that, because there's a lot of stuff that could happen in 2 years.
Yeah, you're locking yourself into a date you really don't need to be doing right now.
Yeah, you could make that decision, down the line. So
1,000%. I'm with you.
Okay. All right. So the third match, MJF, Mark Briscoe. We talked about this for the most part. We don't have to stay on this one too long, but the idea of the thumbtacks, I think we've seen so many matches with thumbtacks in the last 2 or 3 years that the effect of them we were maybe a little bit more numb to the idea of thumbtacks than we were, when Mick Foley and Randy Orton brought him out, where it's like, oh no, Randy Orton's going to go through tacks. I can't believe it.
Like, you'd be sitting on the couch and you'd feel them, like, you'd watch him hit the tacks and you'd lift yourself off of the couch cushion just in like that empathic shock. You're like, no.
Yeah, exactly. And now we've seen so many of them. I mean, we've seen Moxley flat back bump on a bed of nails.
Yeah.
Like, so to that extent, maybe the tacks aren't really as big of a deal anymore. Because they, once you see them take the bump, like bump after bump after bump, and there was even Mark Briscoe taking him right to the top of his head, and they're sticking in his head. They just became a storytelling device at some point. So I was totally fine with them as the match was going. But if the match wasn't as good, I probably wouldn't have been as fine with them. They probably would have been a bit of a distraction.
Yeah, there are certain elements to matches lately, like barbed wire and tacks, and sometimes you do the broken glass, that it's like you're already going to an outcome and a direction in this match that, it's not for me. So I'm just like, I'm here for the ride, and I know that there are other people that just go nuts for it, but like, it's just not like, I could go a pay-per-view without a hardcore match and not even make a conversation about like, I missed that hardcore match. Like, but they do it in every AEW pay-per-view. You need to get your $50 worth. Now more than ever, they're going to make sure that you're getting every bit of your $50 that you spend. So I accepted to move on rather than finger wagging because I get it.
Where do you see both people going? Briscoe cut a promo teasing the return of Orange Cassidy in a match against the Don Callis family on Dynamite. So they've already set that up for Dynamite. What does MJF do next?
I think MJF starts rebuilding his win-loss category in the positive, and he's still got that contract with for the title match with Hangman. So you know that they're gonna be building him back up for that title match because he's got to, build himself up, and then he's got to, announce that he's going for the title at some point. So there's a groundwork to be laid there. I do think that even though Mark Briscoe won, MJF is still going to end up being the bigger star moving forward. And Briscoe, maybe a singles title, like the TNT Championship against Kyle Fletcher at some point. But, like MJF is going to be in world title feuds. I don't see Mark Briscoe in world title feuds.
Yeah, I'm very intrigued now. You have this idea of Wrestler of the Year, and I don't generally vote in the Wrestling Observer Awards because I don't keep a good track record of all of the stuff. So when the time comes for me to vote, I'm like doing so much trying to figure, trying to remember stuff. So, and it's, I do podcasts for the website. So I kind of am comfortable going like, okay, I don't have to, not
you
that
have nothing to prove to anybody.
Well, no, not, when you have some relationships in the business, like there's a thing where, I'm like, okay, I'm fine not voting in this thing.
Sure.
But I know people are going to have Ospreay on their list of Wrestler of the Year. Mystico.
I think
Hangman,
he's my guy right now.
Mystico?
I think so.
Hangman on the WWE side, depending on what you value, there's a couple of decent contenders. I'm going with this based on whose matches do I look forward to and enjoy the most because it's kind of the total package. Right now, I don't know if I would have ever said this. I think my favorite actual in-ring wrestler in wrestling right now is MJF.
I get it. Like, he is his own wrestler with his own unique skill set, but he is taken from the best in the business. Like, I'm watching him and I see the Ric Flair in the entrance, like just the way that he carries himself like a superstar, like all the pores around him kind of thing. And when he's in the ring, he's deliberate and he's calculated, but he's also very efficient with like what he does in the ring. Like, he doesn't do 5 moves when 3 moves will do the trick. Like, he's incredibly efficient and also very compelling. So I've had my issues with MJF in the past where it's just like frustrated to no end because he's reverting back to the things that he feels are safe in order to, maintain his persona and his aura. That's not what happened this weekend. Like, he elevated himself and he elevated his opponents because he did more than he normally does. And going back to back, that dude has got to be exhausted based off of what I saw him pull off and the amount of blood loss that he had over 2 days. That he definitely ain't wrestling on Wednesday. I'll tell you that.
I'm gonna guess that his wife did the majority of the wedding planning because that was also a thing that recently happened to him.
Yeah, he's got to go back and film. He still hasn't had a honeymoon. Maybe he's getting a honeymoon now after the beating he took in these 2 matches. But no, I completely get it. He is a glue that is keeping a major part of the wrestling world together, if you think. Yeah.
All right. So then the next match was the Hurt Syndicate against against GOA and Ricochet. I guess together they were called The Demand. Is that
whatever.
right?
Yeah, that's what it says here on Cage Match.
Oh my gosh. Don't
they have a
that
list
name.
of demands? I don't know.
Don't like that name. Don't like the vision either. So a lot of these names are not hitting with me. So this match was really about getting GOA over to an extent because they're, anybody with the Hurt Syndicate has been coming up in second place of late. And it's not like the Hurt Syndicate was like, hey, we're putting these guys over. But because GOA is so physical, you can kind of see it, right? You can kind of see it to where these dudes can hit too. These dudes are bruising. These dudes are buffed out. Like, they can compete. The two variables were Ricochet and MVP. And MVP comes into this match. MVP was like, this is back in 2005, man. I'm like the new SmackDown star, and that's how he was wrestling it. Like he was the strong style. That was who he was in this match. And then he has the bad knees, so they use that as the storytelling device. And then Ricochet comes in, and he sees Shelton, who's very put together, and he does the fake traps thing. And it was funny, but I made the comment. I was like, we have a manager in this match, and yet Ricochet is wrestling like a normal manager historically would in a match like this. So I didn't like that at all, actually. I'm like, dude, you're supposed to be you were in the main event in the Tokyo Dome last year. Like you shouldn't be that character in this match. I know some people are entertained by it, which is fine. Like I'm sure he's having a blast. But then he did eventually get the pin on MVP. So the right outcome happened. But Lashley and Shelton still have not lost as a team, which is whatever that story is. But I thought this was pretty good. I enjoyed it. I was entertained. I was very sports entertained by this match.
I liked it a lot. I felt that we were talking like if they're wanting to close the door on the story that they did last year with Ricochet getting punked out by MVP, Ricochet should get the pin on MVP and we can all move on. And that's exactly what happened. And you saw it, you're like, perfect. Now we have closed the door on the Hurt Syndicate and Ricochet. And if anyone wants to perceive him as a geek because they got the thing on him, well, now he's turned it around and he's got that win and his guys beat their three guys. And, the perception is there. I'm totally fine with Ricochet being like the chicken shit, like little heel hiding behind his two heavies and like coming off a little bit like a manager as a result of that, because look at him. He went out there and he tried to puff up his chest and that when he went up against Bobby Lashley, he knows the role that he's trying to play and he's got the right guys with him. The only thing that I think of is when I look at this match is like, we're getting to a point with the Hurt Syndicate where there's not a whole lot left to do with them because they're losing matches against people that they kind of developed stories with, when they got here. And if they're wrapping up those stories, not really setting groundwork for new stories, are these guys sticking around?
I don't know.
Yeah.
If they don't, I don't think it's a giant loss, but if you can figure out what to do with them, maybe they could be a little bit more valuable. But there's also the whole, how hard is it to book them? That whole part. Just also wanted to shout out Andre's Gaming, who is in the chat as well. Okay, so then we had, from what I was to guess before the main event, this was Dave Meltzer's favorite match: Kazuchika Okada, Konosuke Takeshita, and Mascara Dorada in a triple threat for the United title. And this was a match designed to tell the Okada and Takeshita story, which Don Callis tried to tell as Takeshita and Okada are so competitive because Takeshita is the junior of Okada and he is the young boy. But did they have a relationship in Japan?
No, John just made that up in the middle of the match to basically neg Takeshita.
Yeah, that's what I thought. You know,
Yeah.
I don't remember hearing anything about them having a relationship.
No. I was like, that is the biggest crock of crap.
But that was the story, is that you have two Japanese wrestlers in your stable. One is an all-time great, and one is a great person who's kind of on the rise. And then the other story they were trying to tell was one of Massacre Dorado. This was his chance to kind of get on the map in a very big way in AEW. And as I'm watching this match, Dave's going crazy for all these moves. Like, he's just loving this match. And I'm going like, wow, Dorada is right with these guys. Like, they're creating this match also so that he is right with them, so that he is looking fantastic and he's doing his part, hitting on everything. He's not screwing anything up. It's all fast. He's on the ball. And I'm thinking like, okay, let's say that we just made a new star. Let's say that happened on the television show, on this pay-per-view. Let's say that Dorada is made. What happens on Wednesday? How do you take advantage of this? Because my worry, and it is a lack of faith in Tony Khan, in Tony Khan's style of booking, I worry that they're not going to follow up on it, and it's going to be Dorada on Collision in a 6-man. It's going to be Dorada on, in an all-star tag on Dynamite. Like, how do you tell this story of this young wrestler who just had a fantastic match and is kind of like opened eyes to people who, they've seen him before, but they didn't know he was like this. It's not like he's going to be able to cut promos in English. He's not aligned necessarily with anybody. So what do you do creatively to make sure that he is leveled up? Because that seemed to be the goal of this match.
I think that he made a name for himself 1,000%. I think that name is probably going to have to stay on people's tongues for about 3 to 4 weeks until Tony figures out what he wants to do with him, because he's already got Hologram. He's putting him in a multi-man match on Wednesday. He's got all these plans. Like, we were watching with Dave, and he loves this story that, he found out that Massacre Dorada and Konosuke Takeshita was not a fake match, and now, like, Tony had to put this match together. So I feel like this was more like an itch to scratch, and like, yeah, it's a great match, we'll do it. But I don't think there's follow-up, man. Like, I don't think that Massacre Dorada is a big part of the plan going forward. I think we were talking, and I was like, they should do Arena Mexico, Forbidden Door next year, and have Mystico and Massacre Dorada. Like, New Japan is depleted. You don't have to go back to the O2 Arena in England next year. Arena Mexico, and just running down a show with AEW and CMLL across the board. Put Massacre Dorada in a world title match. Put Mystico in one of these big matches. Like, they're big stars. They don't have to win. But if you put them in the, like, put Dorada, Mystico, and whatever the third guy in the trios matches, and you could have them win the AEW, like, 6-man titles, no problem. Like, they would blow the roof off the doors if they had a chance to do that, So I don't think that he's a priority. I think that Tony has a lot of priorities, including, like, Orange Cassidy coming back, and now
we'll see if that's a priority, because there are a lot of people who are like,
but I'm saying,
how you
like,
bring this dude back.
But I'm saying, like, that's the names that he's focused on programming the middle of the card outside of his top stars. I don't see Massacre Dorada being that priority when he has all these returning people that all of a sudden he's got to make room for.
Dave and I were having this conversation about how you're showcasing a lot of these lucha stars, yet where are they on the pecking order for a title shot or for a main event slot? Or we've seen Commander, right? Commander is like the lovable loser. Hologram, like, this dude never loses, yet he's never in any important matches. We just saw Massacre Dorada have the match of his life, and the worry is like,
now what?
He's not going to be doing anything interesting. So That is what I would like to see. I think in order for the fan base to take the lucha libre aspect of AEW more seriously, you really have to level up one of these guys.
Yeah.
And Dorada, to me, seems like the best one just based off of this match and, some of the other stuff that I've seen, whether or not you want, a lot of people, want it to be the Beast Mortos. Some people want it to be Hechicero. I think Dorada is a little bit more of that AEW style that would fit in against just about anybody. So I think, but let's pick one and let's level him up, because or else your lucha libre guys are just pin eaters and lovable losers, and I'm not sure that you want it to be that.
How long ago was it that we knew Hechicero was the goods?
I don't know.
Maybe a year ago. Around the Continental Classic last year, we're like,
yeah, but it's all based on sort of inside wrestling and understanding how good someone is. It's not based on wins.
But hear me out. Like, you knew he was good, and you knew that AEW should focus on him more. But it took months to get to that point where he was in the Don Callis family. And even in the Don Callis family, like, they give him the entrance, like that Yo Soy Hechicero. But it took months for them to get to that point, other than just putting in on random collision matches and having bangers and getting him over. They still didn't go as far as they could with him because he would always lose. Mortos, always losing.
Yeah.
Like, they have all these guys. And even Takeshita, how many years was it when he was on AEW Dark and everyone was like, this guy is the future? Like, go with him now. And it took 2 or 3 years for them to really be like, now it's his turn. Those are the things that, there are guys that are stars now, and there are guys that you're investing, like that we were talking about with Kyle Fletcher, but it can't just be Kyle Fletcher. Like, you have to find like 4 or 5 guys, or like 2 or 3, like surefires to build to the future, because you can't count on the same 5 guys to main event your shows for the next 3 years.
So the finish was Okada hitting the Rainmaker on Dorada. Lots of back and forth, really great stuff. Okada and Takeshita, they're definitely slow telling that story, but it's going to hit a climax. Okada threw 2 of his best drop kicks of the year in this match.
He worked hard. He was more than 4-star Okada tonight.
The one thing that did make me laugh though is Takeshita was throwing those running knees, or what does he call that move?
I know what you're talking about, but I don't remember what it's called.
And so he hits Dorada with one, and instead of pinning Dorada, he turns around because he wants to hit Okada with one. And so he throws it. Okada catches his leg, but Takeshita forgot to not slap on this one. So you heard the nice slap on the blocked knee strike. But yeah, great, really good match. And I thought a pretty good match, a pretty good star-making performance, but you have to follow up on it, or else it's not a star-making performance, because if he's not a star.
The running knee into the corner, it was on the tip of my tongue, because I've got a Speaking Strong Style show, right? We do New Japan, and we're on Fridays on the Viking Media Network. But there's a guy,
and we just added you to the audio channel. So you are now
I just figured
in the audio channel on Friday mornings, and you guys go live on this channel Thursday afternoon, evening on the East Coast.
Yeah, so we are live on YouTube, and then the audio drops on for your Friday morning ears. But there's a guy that just came back to New Japan named Yuto Ice. Him and Oscar, they were young blood in Europe. Some people might know him, but he does the running knee into the corner. And it's actually called the Bombaclat. But the thing about this guy is every time he does it, he just yells the name at the top of his lungs.
Maybe that's what Takeshita should do. He should scream the name, and then we won't forget what the movie is called.
Bombaclat over it. And you're like, God, that's annoying, but I love it.
All right, Jon Moxley and Darby Allin. Actually, I kind of thought this match wasn't as sicko as it was going to be.
Oh, it was reserved for sure.
But they did pull out Moxley's earrings and make his ear bleed and use a fork on his ear and blade the ear and bite the ear and all of those things, and using the coffin itself for bumps and throwing Darby out of the ring onto the coffin on the outside. And so, lots of stuff on the outside of the ring as well. The storytelling in the match I thought was pretty darn good because, of course, Darby is the underdog, insane daredevil babyface, and Jon Moxley is the very evil, sadistic heel, whose goal, by the way, is just to make wrestling better. So he's a sadistic heel who wants to make wrestling better. And so we are led to believe as this match is going on that, okay, Darby's about to win this thing. All he has to do is shut this thing and he's going to win. And nope, that's where Pac came out. And so Moxley did actually win. Now, again, we have to wait to see where the story goes. But on this day, on this show, in front of this crowd, I think the finish came off a little flat, which is kind of the story of the second half of this show for me. And so I thought it was a good match, though a lot of people aren't going to like it because of the craziness and the coffin and the interference and all of that stuff. I get that, and I can understand that. I thought that they did, within the scope of what the match was, I thought they did a really good job. I wouldn't call it a 5-star match in any way, but I was entertained, and I thought it was good until Darby got jacked in the end. Now, of course, the whole story is going to be for Darby to eventually get his win and for Jon Moxley to eventually get his comeuppance, as we've seen in this Death Rider story historically. But I thought it was a way for Darby to possibly win because, again, you just said this before, you need more people who you can main event these shows with. And Darby has been said, it's been said that he is a future world champion. And this is a long ride to get there because ever since he's come back, I don't think his character has been very consistent. I think some of the time he's been the asshole instead of the babyface, vengeful babyface. We still haven't seen Gabe Kidd. Gabe Kidd may still be in a body bag somewhere. And thus, so now we get here and, okay, maybe it's the next pay-per-view that Darby finally gets his revenge. Maybe it's the next one after that. So we'll see. But I did think that this finish came flat.
And then he's got to run it back with Jon Moxley.
He could beat Pac on TV, but now do you want to beat Pac immediately? He just came back. So is Darby going to beat him right away?
Pay-per-view match. I think you do it next. I think you do it at St. Louis.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like that's one big match. Then Darby gets his win back. And then you can kind of have him go through the Death Riders. You can even have him go through the Death Riders via like the Continental Classic. Like have him beat all those guys throughout and then, kind of make his way back to Moxley eventually. And, they're keeping Moxley strong because he took out Will Ospreay, and Will Ospreay is in that main event tier. So you knew that like if Moxley was going to lose in a match, the likelihood that it happened earlier rather than later on before, he's become that big player for that seemed like the direction it was going to go. But I like what they're doing here, except were you around for the post-match angle at the very end of the show?
Which post-match angle?
After the main event, I believe Moxley sent the Death Riders off, and then he was going to kill Darby, and then Darby woke up, beat him with
hit him with the pipe in the neck.
Hit him with the pipe, and then set him on fire.
Yeah, I was there.
Feels like that's a Moxley taking time off kind of thing.
He never takes time off.
You set the dude on fire. I hope he takes time off now.
I hope so too.
Like, why would you do that if you weren't like giving him a week or two off? You know what I mean? Like, what a waste of an angle. All you saw was him like lift his ass up in the air, like, oh, I just got singed. Like you got to really sell this.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
There's one more match. You kind of skipped over it. Do you have any thoughts about Mercedes Moné and Riho?
Oh yeah, I skipped that one on accident. I was like, I'm looking at my notes here because I wrote my notes in order, And I didn't actually write anything about that match. And that's not because it wasn't good. I thought it was a pretty darn good match. The problem, at least I'm guessing the problem from the live crowd, is they just never bought Riho as a contender. And she was doing all the babyface tricks in the book to try and get this crowd excited. She did the CEO dance. She was, doing crazy spots. She was selling great. Her timing was fantastic. It was a good match, but I just don't think that people bought her as a contender. And in a sense, she kind of came off, and now she had a better match than this, but early in the match, I had vibes of local babyface against the national touring NWA champion heel kind of thing. But it turned into something better than that, of course. But yeah, I don't know. This was, Mercedes is so good that she usually is able to stand out a little bit more on a show in a sea of really good matches. And I don't think she was able to do for this one, but I think it's mostly because people just did not buy Riho. This was more of a thing for Mercedes because she wanted to do it than necessarily a properly built world title match or TBS title match.
Yeah, I think Mercedes wanted the match with Riho. She wanted to check the boxes against all the former women's AEW women's world titles. Like she's developing her lineage. For me, the biggest thing is Riho did not look good in that match with Alex Windsor, Emi Sakura, and Mercedes Moné a couple weeks ago, and she looked a million times better, which was just kind of a relief. She'd been away from the ring for a while, and you just don't know. Some people, got to shake off some rust. Some people, don't get it back if they're gone from the ring for a while. And, just seeing Riho be what she looked like when she was at her peak in AEW a few years ago, that was relieving to see because she really is a good addition to the roster if she can be there for a while.
And that's the other thing is people don't believe that she will be. So they're like, oh, do we really have to care that much about her knowing she's going to be gone for the next year? Totally. So shout out to Lady B, who's also in the chat. She says, just wonder when Monet beats Jade's record, because that's what I'll think all of this is about. Meaning Mercedes just pinning all of these women, lining them up and pinning them. Then maybe the downfall begins. I mean, what's the flip side of this run? That has to be part of the story. Are we there yet? I don't know. The other thing about, and we'll talk about this in a second, the other thing about Toni Storm losing is the idea that should Mercedes be the one to beat Toni if she's losing, or the flip side, should Toni be the one to beat Mercedes if Mercedes is losing? And so that, that is an idea. They had a good match. I don't know if I thought it was a great match. I know a lot of people like the All-In match better than I did, but there was meat left on the bone. So I was like, okay, they can do this again. I would like to see this again. And so maybe Toni Storm is the one to eventually beat Mercedes. I don't know. I was kind of, I was thinking it could have been Athena, but then I also thought Athena could have been the person to beat Toni Storm, and that didn't happen. And then now we haven't seen Athena in forever, so I don't know.
Have they done Mercedes Moné and Megan Bayne yet?
That's a good question.
I don't think they have.
Don't think so. I don't think so.
That might be an interesting one. I was laughing because the joke that I had heard over the weekend was somebody's going to beat Moné for all 10 titles, and then the rib is going to be they're going to have to fly all over the world and drop the titles one by one, and I would just die.
Yeah, if I'm going to win that match, I tell Tony Khan, I only want the TBS title on the line.
I'm vacating everything else. Unless you're flying me and I get a week-long vacation and all these places, we're not doing that.
Okay, Toni Storm versus Kris Statlander versus Thekla versus Jamie Hayter. If I was going to say what the second worst match on the card was, it might be this match, only because I don't think it got to the level that I was expecting it to eventually get to before the pin came out of nowhere for Stat to win. I really like the Thekla character. I don't think she should be at the level of a world champion yet, but I do like her character. I was talking to John LaRocca, and it kind of reminded me a little bit of Luna Vachon, just in the different type of character that it is. And I think that works. You need variety in wrestling, and I think she stands out in a very good way. Jamie Hayter just feels cold to me, even though as much as I like her. And then you had Stat, who, Stat's just been there, almost like you kind of take her for granted because she is always there. And hopefully they can turn this win into something for business, because it's still, I've how many hours have I had to think about this? It still feels flat to me, no matter how many people are out there saying so happy for Stat, like Fernando. I am too, by the way. I'm happy that, she's getting an opportunity. But if you're trying to create, actually the thing that we didn't even think about, I don't know anything about this, but was Toni originally going to lose this match, or does she have something else going on? I don't know about that, but that's the thing that you think of when you see the finish come out of nowhere like this. So I think, to what you said, if they have this to be the vehicle to help tell her story better with the Death Riders, with Willow, great. I would like to know where we're going with Toni Storm too. Is she going to do the downfall thing with Mariah May, like she did with Mariah May, where she just goes out of her mind? Because that's already happened, so I would hope not. But yeah, let's see where it is. I still think it was flat, but now we move on and we build to whatever they're building to.
Toni Storm is a huge star, and actually her not having the title elevates the possibility of her losing some matches, because with her having the title, the implication was, well, this other person isn't going to be the world champion, so she's probably going to retain. Now that kind of risk isn't there, she's probably going to win a lot of these matches still, because she's the biggest babyface star on the women's division. But now the element of, can she lose, just feels a lot more possible, because the obvious factor of what you can't do when she's champion supersedes all, I like that we have people chasing titles that are perceived the best in the world. So you have that little journey and story of when are they going to be on top eventually again.
All right, Bandito, Brody King as Brodito against the Young Bucks, against Jet Speed, against Hechicero and Josh Alexander in a ladder match. Bryan Danielson was me in every ladder match, admonishing everybody for being dumb to not go get the titles on the ladder. Why are you trying to hit this high spot? That is me during every single ladder match. I'm going to say I was slightly disappointed with this. Some of it may be because I was fatigued as I was watching this match. I was like, okay, I kind of hit my wall, the 4-hour wall. And it's everything we've ever seen in a ladder match, no matter how creative these guys are, no matter how athletic these guys are. Again, sort of the taking them for granted a little bit, because they are fantastic athletes. But I don't know, man. I'm so tired of ladder matches. And I don't know that we needed a ladder match. I would have much rather seen the Bucks against Brodito, or, Brodito against Jet Speed as a singles, instead of the idea of the ladder match. We had so many gimmicks on this show. This is where finally I was like, enough, like we're done with this stuff. And it was during this match, which was the semi-main event. Brodito did win. I think probably the right thing, though. I think I would have put the Bucks over, and then I would have had Brodito chase them to get a real title victory and as baby faces. Because to me, Brodito is still like the 4th or 5th most important tag team in this company, and they're the actual champions. But obviously they had the Jack Perry thing, so that was not in the cards, and Brodito won the match. What do you think? Am I being hard on this match?
No, not at all. Not at all. There are obviously people that are going to do the oohs and ahs because of who was in this match, because of ladders, because of all the things, all the factors baked in. This is, I'm at a point where I see a party match on AEW every week with some form of these 8 guys. And instead of ladders, we have briefcases full of money. And this time we have ladders. But it's the same matches that we're doing.
Yeah.
And when we're watching a near 5-hour show and you want to have all your stars on the show and you just want to throw all of them into a party match and go 25 minutes and run like competitively against another promotion, I get it. That's fine. But there wasn't anything, they didn't recreate the wheel, like they didn't reinvent anything on this match. It was just a party match with extra element of danger. And I'm kind of done with ladders. I'm kind of done with all of that stuff. Like, bring out one table in a match and you tease it throughout the thing. I'm there with you.
Yeah.
But if you're bringing out like 5 different coffins in one match, 4 different tables, 3,000 thumbtacks, it's like there's a lot going on here. And at some point, the meaning of danger is almost lost because you're so desensitized to every single thing doesn't kill you and people survive it.
Party match, you say? Sorry, I can't use that on Fight Game Podcast anymore because John no sells it too much.
I got people at my work that play that meme, and I bought into it years ago.
Okay, so main event. We already talked about this, but we'll just go through the final paces of it. Hangman and Kyle Fletcher. The early story, at least that Don Callis was trying to tell, was that because of that brainbuster on the table to the floor on Wednesday's Dynamite, Hangman came in hurt. He didn't come in that hurt. He did have some kinesiology tape around his neck and shoulders. Don tried to tell us that if he's throwing strikes with his left hand, that's a good thing for Kyle because that means that Hangman is hurt. He did it for a little while, but I thought he sold really well. But he then started to use his right arm. And he finally, the closing finish, or the closing finish is repetitive, but the finish of this match was a scary one. The dead eye from the top rope. And Kyle Fletcher had to figure out how to take a move where the idea is for Hangman to, it's like a pile driver, but Hangman is going to use his legs to kind of protect the head, but Hangman's knees have to hit and his legs are behind him and he's got to protect the head that way. But they're coming from the top rope. So Kyle Fletcher had to figure out, with his head going straight down to the mat, how to actually find a way to take the bump on the upper shoulder, which was a scary moment. I think he did it.
Yeah, he tucked his head up and he took it on his shoulder.
So I'm hopeful that he's fine. That was a scary, on a night of insanity. It was probably the most scared for a wrestler that I was during the match. And then after that, he did not pin him with that move, by the way. Kyle Fletcher looked like he would have been dead, and you could have just put a pinky on him to win the match. Nope. He had to pick him up so he could buckshot him, and then he won the match, and Hangman is your world champion. Nothing else happened after that. We were kind of wondering what, is someone going to come out? Nope, that was it. Pay-per-view's done. And so here's my question, which is, where should Hangman go next?
Maybe they have a tournament to determine his next contender.
Who should that winner be?
Well, you could run back John Moxley. You can do Mark Briscoe. You could do Eddie Kingston. But honestly, there really isn't anybody. It probably feels like more callous people are going to get thrown at Hangman based off of we want that title, like the family wants your title. You could do Okada and Hangman. Okada can lose that match.
Okay, so let's look forward to Wednesday. we've kind of used this before as just a thinking exercise. How should Dynamite open on Wednesday?
Video recap of the event, and then once again, Adam Page comes right out, and he's like, "I am the champion, and I'm taking." And then Don Callis comes out and says, "Yeah, well, blah blah blah, yeah," and then we get into the next person on the thing, because right now there are only two viable heel groups, and that's Don Callis and the Death Riders. And if John Moxley's taking time off, it feels like you got to go with the Death Riders. And if it's the Death Riders, or not the Death Riders, Don Callis, it's Okada, because Takeshita's got to go to Japan.
I think it should be Hangman as well. There are two things that I really want them to follow up on, though, and Lady B has mentioned one of them, which is the Kris Statlander, whatever the celebration or the angle is. Like, they really need to make a big deal out of this.
Yes.
She beat Toni Storm.
Yes.
Like, there's a reason for this. Let's really focus on that. Let's make it as big of a deal as possible.
You need Harley Cameron just being her hype man for like the first half of whatever segment they have, and then bringing her out.
And then the Dorada thing, which I think we both believe they may not really follow up on. So though, I think you got, if Hangman is your guy, and look, I have been a little hard on Hangman, not because I don't like him. It's actually because I really like him. Like, I think as a pro wrestler, like, he's pretty much the complete package outside of one thing, which is whatever that it thing is that takes you to the next level. Whatever that thing is, on Martin played a marketing guy, and he would dress in white powder, so he looked like a white guy, and he would say, "The hammer pants." What is the hammer pants for Hangman? What's going to take him to the next level? Because I think he's as a babyface, well-spoken, thoughtful, emotionally vulnerable, which to some wrestling fans, a lot of the male machismo wrestling fans, they don't like that. But I kind of dig it because it makes him a little different. Kicks ass in the ring. Stands up for his pals. Like that, he's got all of those things in the babyface package. Can hold his own in the ring. Promo, he's a good promo. I wouldn't say he's a great promo. But whatever that it factor is that takes you to the next level, that takes you from stunning Steve Austin to Stone Cold Steve Austin, or that takes you from Rocky Maivia to The Rock, whatever that little piece of whatever is, I think he's actually missing it. And if he had it, he could be one of the biggest stars in wrestling. Now, as a in-ring wrestler, he's already there at the top, right? He's already at the tippy top. I'm talking about the next level, which is superstar, which is household wrestling name, which is WWE fans go, who's this Hangman guy that's on AEW? I got to check him out. Whatever that thing is, that's what I want him to get to.
Yeah.
Because I think he's got all the tools otherwise.
I will leave you this before we wrap up. This Hangman and Fletcher feud. There were a couple of things that they did in here that I thought were very deliberate. One was Fletcher, with his finisher, couldn't finish the match. Like, he couldn't put Hangman away with his finisher, which was like directly to the Hangman. You're not ready. You don't have the tools. You're just not there. You will be one day, but you're not. So that played into that. The other thing is they may have potentially booked Hangman into a corner, because what you're looking for is like that babyface fire, that righteous anger, that kind of like, you have wronged me, you have wronged this promotion, and now I'm going to make you like pay in blood. Because of the last 2 years, because of Swerve, because of setting the house on fire, because of the way that he came off as like angry and vengeful, I wonder if they're trying to either shy away from that right now or figure out how they can incorporate that anger into a babyface version of him without making it look like he was the heel that he was when he was full of anger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the different, going through stuff like a normal
Right.
human does, which sometimes when you do that, normal humans often don't like to be reminded of their own trauma. So that's, it's probably easier to play superstar who can beat up everybody, because that's what you look for when you watch this stuff sometimes. But it's, it is unique in that way, that he is a man of emotions and vulnerability and trauma and dealing with stuff, and that is his character.
And hopefully they make him unstoppable when he does manage to figure out how to channel that anger in a way that's like a babyface style. Like anger at the right times and properly like outletted in a pro wrestling match. They should get to that point eventually, because they've essentially told that story up to that point and then stopped.
All right, let's end this with play the Big Dave star ratings. Now, this isn't what we're going to give it. This is what we think Dave is going to give these matches. MJF and Mark Briscoe. What do you think he goes?
4.75.
I agree with you. I think that's right where I would go. What do you think he's going to give the three-way?
5.25.
I think he goes full 5. You had insinuated that you maybe had a clue, and maybe it was from him being so excited that what you thought the
when
star
he
rating
when
was.
he like gleefully responds to like bumps in a match and talks about, oh, these guys are amazing. Like, oh no, that's above 5. Like I'm hedging 5.25.
What do you think he's going to give the main event?
5.
See, I'm going to flip. I'm going to say triple threat is 5. Main event is 5.25. That's my guess.
I can see it.
All right, man. We are going to get out of here, but Keela and Paul are probably right behind us.
Don't forget about those two. They're coming in fast and hot with a much shorter show, but plenty of hot takes.
They're covering WrestlePalooza. I think the WWE show is either over or close.
No, I kept getting updates. Everything. I got all the finishes from ESPN.
Okay, so they're going to go up shortly, and so you can check them out. We are going to take off here and be done.
I will politely not tell everyone the results of the show.
Yeah, I don't even know the results. I mean, I kind of know, but I want to watch enough of it. So, but yeah, this was a long day. I hope that there's not too many of these, but I have a feeling there's going to be many more, and we'll be back
twice a month. I can barely hold on with the once a month right now.
I know. We'll be back on our normal schedule. So Paul Fontaine and I will be back at some point Monday with Takedown, and we'll have our takes. And then you'll be back on Thursday with Steven on the live YouTube feed, and then we'll both have our shows in the audio network as well.
We might reunite after October 18th, St. Louis.
That is the next AEW show.
For Wrestle Dynasty, so mark your calendars for the Garrett and Jeremy AEW Post.
I know that's kind of been our shtick here. So
yeah, it's fun.
Okay, and then I think I'm gonna have another Observe This probably Tuesday night. Now, Draven and I record so late for the East Coasters just because of our schedules, but we're covering the summertime of WWE in 1984, and then we'll get his thoughts on both this show and WrestlePalooza as well.
You guys have a fun rapport with each other.
Yeah, I love that dude. I've known that dude for, probably now like 15 years.
Even if
mostly as an internet
fan, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Mostly as like an internet buddy, but also we've hung out and gone to baseball games and stuff as well. So yeah, he's a good dude. All right, thanks again, Fernando, Andreves Gaming, Maria Graciela, Lady B, all of you who checked us out on the live stream, and all of you who are listening on the audio feed. For Jeremy, I am Double G. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.